Hey, this is Jeremy and welcome back to Blender for Designers. I'm going to do a good old-fashioned tutorial here. We'll be modeling a soda bottle. So this thing, basically. It could be any soda bottle. Of course, I'm super fancy and decided to go with San Pellegrino. Now, I'm going to do this tutorial in two parts. Part one, which is this video, is just going to be modeling the bottle, creating the shape, and getting it into Blender. And part two, I'll unwrap the UVs so we can put labels around it and actually render the thing. And the technique I'm using can be done for any kind of bottle. In fact, it's very similar to what I did for the wine bottle and for the soda can. Any kind of round or what they call lathed shape works with this. But with the soda bottle, you have an extra little wrinkle, or actually 5 extra wrinkles. So we're gonna have to deal with that, and I'll show you how that works. And now I'll go ahead and put a rendering up, even though as I record this, I have not done the rendering yet. And I just want to say that I am going to be building this for Mockup 3D, so that should be up on my app, Mockup 3D, pretty soon. And hopefully you guys get some good use, some good techniques out of this. And another thing, I will take it a little bit slower. I got some feedback on my last tutorial that I kind of went a little quickly and didn't get the keyboard shortcuts. Or, you didn't see what I was doing with the keyboard. So I want to try to be a little bit clear about that. But, if you guys have any questions, please ask them in comments. So with all that, let's go ahead and get started. So let me go ahead and quickly orient you in Blender. I'm using Blender 2.79, which is the latest as of this recording, although 2.8 is coming pretty soon. And I am in Cycles, and I have deleted the default light and the default cube. This is just how I'm set up by default. You can do that in Blender, and I'm gonna scoot this up a little here so you guys can see things and get out of the way of the keyboard here. So I have a keyboard, or just Apple's, little keyboard viewer here. So the keys will highlight when I do them. So, if I do Shift A, you can see it brings up a menu. I'll try to say what I'm doing as well. And so the basic technique we're gonna be doing is I'm gonna be creating a circle. To do that, you hit Shift A, circle. And then what we're going to do, I'm just going to do this approximately. So I tab into edit mode and then E and Z. So we get this basically cylindrical thing. And then we can use that to manipulate. We can manipulate the size of this to kind of create these shapes. And I'll go over this in more detail later. But of course, the first thing we want to do is not be anywhere in Blender. We want to get some reference so we can see what we're trying to do. And to do that, I set up a little set to shoot the bottle. You don't necessarily have to go through all this effort, but I wanted to get it on a nice white background so we could see how the light goes through the bottle. And of course, to get good reference, we need to go ahead and take a picture of the bottle. And while we're doing that, we want to be as zoomed in as we possibly can. We want to get as close to an orthographic view. Now, there's no orthographic view in real life, but essentially an orthographic view is an infinite focal length. And this is the longest lens I have, which is the 140 end of my 14 to 140. So we're going to go into manual photo mode and take a picture. Now we're going to go ahead and bring that image into Photoshop and cut it out. So to do that, I hit L to use the lasso tool, but actually I'm going to go ahead and use the magnetic lasso tool, probably one of my favorite tools for this job. And this isn't entirely a Photoshop tutorial, but I will. So I find this incredibly useful because you can just do that. And then if you want to go straight, you can just hit the Option key and do that. So it's a great way to, this is not just a Blender tutorial, this is for Photoshop in general, if you ever want to isolate things, which you do a lot actually in Photoshop. That said, I am going to go speed through the rest of me isolating this bottle. I mean, it's useful, but it can get a little tedious. I mean, you get the basic idea. I go through with a magnetic lasso, and then I grab the regular lasso and kind of tweak it a little bit. All right, so then when we've got that to a point where we like it isolated, we can go, and I'm doing off screen here, layer, layer mask, reveal selection. Nice, okay. Now to crop to our layer, we go to the layer, hold the command key, hit click to bring back the selection, then you hit V to go back to the move tool, C to go to the crop tool, and then it crops it automatically to your selection, which is exactly what I want, except what I want to do is get the center point right at the bottom. This is going to really help when I go into Blender, because then that means I can get the bottom of the bottle at 0, 0, 0. And then I'm going to drop the resolution a bit here because this is going to be a little bit high res. So now I'm going to save the bottle, and I'm also going to create an outline. I'm going to use the selection, create a border, and make a nice little cyan border. So we can have both the bottle as a reference and the outline as a reference to bring into Blender. So now let's actually go into Blender and import those images. So I'm going to hit numpad 1 to go to front view, hit numpad 5 to go to front orthographic view. Then I'm going to hit the N key, or you can hit this little plus button to bring up the shelf on here. And that's where we have our background images. Yay. And I'm going to go ahead and add the bottle image. We're going to put that just in the front. And we can open that. It's in Photos. And it's enormical. It's super enormical. So this is, if we zoom that, if we drag that out, we can see this is the scale. So we'll just bring that to 1. And then we'll also bring in the outline image. In fact, I think I'll use that image for my modeling. And before we start modeling, let's take another look at this bottle. It's basically a regular bottle. You've got, you can create circles and just bring them in on the neck and stuff like that. Except for this bit down here. We notice that there are these indents. Now it's basically flat at the bottom, but there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 little indents. So we've got to deal with that. And to deal with that, we're going to start with a circle, as we would with any other bottle. So we hit Shift-A, Mesh, Circle, except instead of 32 vertices, we want 15, which is a multiple of 5, but gives us 2 little extra ones there in the middle. So we just hit, so we're going to have 15, and we can hit Return, and that should do it. And then we see we have our little 15 hexagon or whatever. So then to make that a bit smoother, we're going to add a subsurf modifier. So you go to Modifiers and add a subdivision surface. And let's add 2 of them. So then we'll go back, we'll hit numpad 1 to go into front view and hit tab to go into edit mode. And then scale this in. So hit S to scale, and then we'll just go to the radius. So we'll start extruding this. We'll hit the E key to extrude. But then we'll just hit GZ, so we only do it in the Z direction. And so we have our kind of basic cylinder here. Now, you'll notice, as I zoom in here, that it's kind of black. That's because the normals are wrong. The normals, well, normals are complicated. Basically, it means we're on the wrong side, but that's easy to fix. You just hit the A key to select everything, and then you do Control N. I think it fixed the normals. I forget the exact name of that command, but there you go. And then, of course, let's just tab back out of edit mode so we don't have all these little dots, these facets. We can use smooth shading. All right, so now that we can better see what we're doing, I'm going to bring our little bottle back. And actually, I'm going to just get rid of the shape for a minute. And then we can hit Z, or you can go over here to go into wireframe mode. But we can also just do it by hitting the Z key. And that way we can get an idea of the radius. So actually, this makes me realize that we want to be a little bit wider. So I'm going to tab back into edit mode, and I'm going to hit Scale, S, and then I'm going to hit Shift Z. So that means scale in every direction except Z. So I want to get as wide as we can on the, or as about the width of the bottle. Go back. So sorry, if you move it by accident, I hit the middle mouse button, you just hit 1, and it will go back to front orthographic view. So now we're going to, now I'm going to move that up. And to do that, I selected the edge loop. So to do that, you hit Option Shift and then right click, and that selects that edge loop. And then I can move that up here. I see a little bit of a bulge here too. But yeah, let's do that. And then there's a little indent for the label, but we'll get to that in a minute. So what we want to do is we want to create yet another edge loop right here before we get to the indents. So I'm going to hit Control R, and that creates an edge loop, and we can go ahead and slide that down to right before the indents right there. It's a little bit hard to see, but we can take a look at, I have the bottle in front of me. I can start taking a look at it. But we don't need to be super exact right now. So I'm going to hit Z to go back to solid mode. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to this very bottom here, and we said we had 15 rims. So first of all, I'm going to hit A to deselect everything. Then I'm going to hit Control 7 to just go to the bottom view. And then I'm going to, actually, let me just see the front. Yeah, the front is between 2 of them. Good. Okay, so I'm going to hit Control 7 again. So what I want to do is I want to hit every third vertex. So select this one, then skip 2, and then select another one by hitting Shift right click, and skip 2, hit 1. Maybe I should explain what we're doing here. Is I'm selecting every third vertex. As you know, I have 15 of them. So what we're going to do is, create that little indent by having 2 vertices out and 1 in. So I did that, and then, so I've selected the in vertices. They're not in yet, but I can make them go in by hitting Scale, S, and then just drag it in. So we can already see it peel a little bit. You have to hit the, if you hit right mouse button, it undoes, so you have the left mouse button to do. And there you see, we got a nice little peel. I think that's actually, it seems a little far, so we can just bring that out again. And there we go. And since we have the edge loops, it's actually creating quite a bit more geometry in here. But it also is going to create a little curve here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add another edge loop, Control R. So what I'm going to do is add another edge loop, Control R, and bring that so that just tightens that in a little bit. And then, so these are just, these are just peeling in just like that. Okay, cool, that looks pretty good. So what we want to do is we want to take this bottom one, select A to unselect it, and then Option Shift, and then right click, we'll select that edge loop, and then we can E for extrude, that's E as in echo, and then scale, S as in Sam. So there we go, we have a nice, so that will create a nice little flat area. But actually, we should take another look at the bottom of the bottle, because it's not just totally flat. You see there's kind of a bit of a star pattern here. So these inner points, there's no points obviously, this is just a real bottle, but the inner points should maybe come up a little bit to kind of mimic that. So let's rotate that around and take a look, and then we can again grab every third vertex. It's a bit easier to see now, and then maybe just raise them up a little bit, see what happens. I think that's actually looking pretty good. Yeah, that is. In fact, let's raise that up a little bit more. Yeah, that looks like a nice dent. And then we can actually hit A to unselect, edge select that, and then I'm going to scale out. And then I'm going to extrude E again and scale back in. So we basically do have now more of that star pattern. In fact, one thing we could do is instead of having this be a star pattern, this could actually be a circle. So what we're going to do is going to delete that, and then I'm going to hit A, Shift A, circle, and then that needs to be 15 vertices again, but although we want it way smaller. And then to kind of merge these two, you select both of these. So select this as an edge loop, Shift Option right click, and then I'm going to do what's called bridging the edge loop. And there's no command shortcut as far as I know. And if you want to find a command but don't have its shortcut, what you do is you just hit the space bar, and then you search for it. So I'm going to say bridge edge loop. Perfect. Boop. Yeah, that looks nice. That looks really nice. Actually, that's exactly the kind of star pattern we want. Although what I might do is I might just scale this out a little bit. This is what's great about edge loops is you can really tweak them kind of nicely like this. You know, edge loops and subsurf and stuff. In fact, what I might do is I might grab these vertices and bring those in a little bit. Just the vertices. There's only 5 of them, so it's not that hard to deal with. Yeah, there we go. That's a nice, lovely star pattern. And then what I can do to just close the gap here is I can extrude again, scale. And actually, there's a little bump here, so maybe I'll reproduce that. I'll E scale again, and then just raise this up just a smidge. Yep, and then E scale, and then finally E scale, and then we're going to merge all those just to create, the final merge. So to do that, we do Alt M, and you want them to merge at center. Perfect. Okay, actually that loop may be a bit big, so we'll just grab these 2 edge loops. There's one down there, and we can do scale Shift Z, and just bring that in a little bit. Nice, very nice, very, very nice. Just looking at it, you just want to like tweak it a little bit. Oh, one thing I want to do is I'm going to go hit 1 to get into front view, and then since these are kind of going in a little bit, what I want to do is I want to take this outer edge loop. So hit A to unselect everything, and then select this edge loop. Sorry, select this edge loop. Yeah, there we go. And then what I want to do is hit 1 again, is scale, just scale. I mean, you could do scale Shift Z, but Yeah, and then so we just get it around to be the same radius. Just scale shift Z. Yeah, because it looks like it widens out a bit. So, you know, it's kind of like tracing. You're just kind of tracing this out. It looks pretty good. We may tighten that up a bit later. But let's get to the rest of the bottle. So go 1 for orthographic view, and then we can hit Z again so we can start to see how to make the rest of the bottle. So creating the rest of the bottle is fairly straightforward. Very similar to what we had done, you know, on the can or on the wine bottle. So we're basically, you know, doing essentially a lathe. So I'm going to extrude in Z again, and I'm going to go all the way to the top here and just scale this in. This isn't going to look right, but we'll be able to tweak it. So at least we have those two radii. So then we want another edge loop right about here, and obviously we want to widen that out quite a bit. So we get this nice little bulge there. Yeah, that's about it. Maybe even a little bit lower. Yeah, there we go. It's hard to see. So actually what I'm going to do is now I'm going to go ahead and bring in the shape here. And I'm going to go ahead and make that, I'm going to put that in the front, just so we can kind of see what we're working with here. And maybe just drop the opacity a little bit. Yeah, it's pretty good. Okay. But then what I want to do is I want to tighten this edge right here. There we go. Nice. All right. Actually, this is a little distracting, to be honest. And then all right, what I want to do, this seems to be, you know, you're never perfectly straight, but widen that out just a little bit, and then maybe give this another, just a slight tightening. It's going to be very smooth with the subsurf, so we don't have to worry too much about that. And then, of course, what we want to do is, actually what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go right to the top here. So I'm going to extrude in Z to get to the very top rim, and then we'll widen that out for the cap. Actually, we won't widen that out. We're going to widen this out for the cap here. So we'll take both of these caps and scale Shift Z to basically be the width of the cap. And again, these aren't totally even, so we're just going to kind of guesstimate here. And then what we want to do is we want to grab this in the middle here, and then for that little rim thing, and scale that way out. And then this, at this point, we're just going to eyeball it. So I'm going to go here, and this does not look right, but it will in a minute. So what we're going to do is create another edge loop here to tighten this up a bit, and then this can come down. Then this one can scale out to complete that rim. Edge loop in there that can come down to kind of rim this up a little bit, create another one here. You know, you're just kind of sort of sculpting with edge loops. In fact, let's get these, we can do scale Z0 so they're on the same plane. Let me raise that up a little bit. Maybe not quite. Maybe we don't exactly want it. It's a straight shelf, so we can raise that up a little bit. And then same thing here. Let's get that inner one there. Inner one up a little bit. I'm not going over every single keyboard shortcut I'm doing because they're all pretty close. Actually, we could probably you can dissolve edge loops if you feel like there's too many. So we can just, or sorry, delete X. To delete an edge loop, just hit X. Oops, not. So you delete X, and then you can just delete an edge loop. See if ever. But actually, I kind of like it there. Okay, so. And then we can scale this, scale in Z to kind of widen that out just a little bit. And then, okay. And then let's take this cap in. So we can go E scale. We only want to scale a little bit, and then we can E scale some more. And then finally a third time. And just like we did at the bottom, Alt M at center. And then to kind of, oh, actually, maybe want, I'm going to bring this in just a little bit, kind of create more of a cap effect. And then maybe just another edge loop right here to kind of cut that off as a cap. All right, that looks pretty good. Looks pretty good. Let's take a look and see what that looks like. All right, it's not the exact same thing, but it's actually this could probably go up a little bit, or both of these could probably go up a little bit. Just Z, yeah, that looks pretty good. Remember, we don't have to have the exact same thing. Let's put another edge loop just in here. Kind of cut that cap off a little bit, and then maybe we can, again, hit A to unselect. I mean, again, we're sculpting with edge loops, so maybe just bring this in a little bit. Can put a little bit more of a round corner on that. And then maybe this comes down a little bit. I don't know. Just looking at it, kind of seeing what looks right. Maybe this comes up, maybe? Yeah, maybe these come down a little bit. So we still see that ridge, but that's pretty nice. That's pretty nice. This looks a little weird. Let's just scale that in Z. And just bring that in just a little bit. Maybe bring this one in just a little bit. Let's take a look at our image again. In fact, what we can do is we can kind of move this. It's X0 now, so we can kind of... This one is X0, so we can kind of move that to the side. Let's just see what we're... Oh, there's two little seals. That's what we're trying to deal with. Okay. So let's scale. So now we can look at this kind of as a reference. Always use reference. So we can scale this in just a little bit. I don't know, maybe scale this in. Because it looks like it kind of goes gradual on the top and then kind of a sharp thing on the bottom. And then... And this seal is actually broken because I drank it, but in a new one it would not be broken, so that this actually is semi-accurate. Now just comparing the two of them, we do see a little taper here at the top, and we can kind of simulate that by grabbing these edge loops and then scaling them in. And that's kind of more accurate, but I kind of just don't like the way it looks that much, so I'm just going to undo it and go with a kind of straight up and down cap, because frankly, I just like the way it looks better, so. Alright, well now let's step back and take a look at this whole thing. And cool, we actually have an indent here already that I wasn't quite expecting, because I know there's a little bit of an indent here for the label. In fact, let's hit 1, so we see them next to each other, and we can actually move this out even a little bit more, so we can kind of see it's actually a little lower than I was expecting. So we can bring that down a little bit, and then actually bring this down just a wee bit as well. And then cool, that's actually kind of nice. And then what we can do is we can create an edge loop here, and then bring these out just a little bit, so scale shift Z. Cool, and that creates, this is actually a little too much of an indent. That creates a nice little indent for our label, because that's a real feature of the bottle. It does seem a little sharp down there, doesn't it? Well, it's pretty sharp in the bottle, too. Maybe it needs to be just a little bit lower. And we'll play around, keep tweaking until we get something that looks just about right. Yeah, that's not too bad. I'll believe that. So there you have it. You got a bottle model. And it looks pretty good. But before we unwrap the UVs and go too nuts with it, let's just see what it looks like when we put a material on it and render it. So to do that, I'm going to go ahead and split the window. Hit N and T to get rid of those. And then I'm going to use a node editor. Hit T again. Oops, sorry, hit N again to get rid of the side thing. So we need a material on here. So let's create a background first. So we're going to go here and create a world. And I want to use nodes, thank you. And let's zoom in. Let's actually go full screen here so you guys can see what I'm doing. And I'm going to hit Shift A to add a node. And I want to add a texture, and this has to be an environment texture. This is the environment map that's going to light the whole thing. I did a whole tutorial on environment maps, and I can link to it. And I have the environment map here. Let's take a look at it. This is my favorite one that I made for Mockup 3D. It has been carefully engineered to be the awesomest environment map ever. And then, so I want to see what that actually looks like lighting this thing. So to do that, we can get into render mode, and we can do that by going to render, or you can hit Shift Z. And then, since we're in orthographic mode, it looks very flat, but we can be in not so orthographic mode. There we go. Although that's way wide angle. The default on the camera is really, really wide. So I'm going to change that. So its default is 35. Let's get it up to 50. So we can actually sort of see what we're doing. Now, it's just a big piece of clay right now. But let's try this out. So let's see what it looks like as kind of a clear plastic. So let's go to the material here, and we'll create. You can use you can create a new material right here. So I'm going to go do that, and what we want is a semi-transparent thing. So we want we're actually going to use a glass. So we hit. Sorry, to do that, I hit this, select, and then X to delete it, and then I hit Shift A, add. We want a shader. And we want glass. And then I'm going to put that right there. And you see a nice, lovely glass bottle. Now, it's a little weird for a couple reasons. One of them is it's totally clear glass, and you never have that. Second reason is it's totally solid. So let's make it not so solid. And ironically, to make it not so solid, we're going to add a modifier called solidify, which will actually create an inside surface. So actually, you can see it already looks a lot better now. So you can see this is basically, it changes the thickness of the bottle. And this is a bottle like a soda bottle, so it's a fairly thick one because it's got to deal with all the carbonation. So we can make that nice and reasonably thick. You know, you can just tweak it like by hand, just like that. In fact, let's get that nice and big so we can kind of see that. And we can see in the environment, you can see all the reflections and refractions and everything, you know, automatically via cycles. And then, of course, we don't want it white, we want it green. So let's just do a greenish and then not a totally bright green, kind of something like that. Yeah, it seems about right. And then we don't want it totally smooth because, you know, this is a cheap plastic. So let's add a little bit of roughness. Maybe not even that much. Maybe, yeah, 0.04 maybe. 0.03. That's good. And then this does seem just a little bit too smooth. Like there should be some kind of white shininess. So we're going to mix that using what's called a Fresnel node. So what we're going to do is actually going to create we're going to have a gloss shader, glossy BDSF, and this is going to be really not rough, so 0.01 or something. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to mix them together. So I'm going to shift A, shader, mix shader, and then we're just going to combine the two so we can go all the way glass or all the way glossy. But let's just put it all the way glass. So we're mostly going to do glass. And then we're not going to mix them just some number. We're going to go ahead and use what's called a Fresnel shader. So we're going to mix them with the Fresnel. So the edges will be kind of glossy and the middle will be not as glossy. So that's going to be kind of like how real life works. So that's perfect. So we're going to add a input, and instead of Fresnel, you want layer weight, but then you take the Fresnel input. And so you can see now the center's not so glossy, the sides are really glossy. But this is a little bit high, so we're going to just have that to 0.25. And that looks like a reasonable plastic bottle. I mean, you know, maybe one thing we could do is just brighten this up just a little bit. Yeah, and you can see kind of both the reflections on the outside and kind of the refractions on the inside. And now, like, looking at this, I mean, obviously the cap we'll need to make solid and everything. We'll do that in the next tutorial when I do the UVs and everything else, and then we'll put labels and whatnot on there. But one thing that's kind of bothering me is just this little ridge right there. So let's see what we can do about that. So let's go ahead and hit Z, the wireframe, and Z here. So let's see if we can't just smooth that out just a little bit. Oh, by the way, if the cursor gets all in a weird place, you can hit Shift-C, Alt-Home to bring it back home and bring everything nice and centered. So let's, first of all, let's move this up a little bit. All right, well, let's see if we can't actually maybe move this. Maybe just a X edge loop. That's actually better already. Move this down a little bit to get a little bit of a ridge there. Yeah, all right. And then we can grab this as an edge loop, but maybe not quite so extreme. Seems too much already, doesn't it? Oh, one thing we could do is just maybe Shift-E to crease this just ever so slightly. Even further. Shift-E is just kind of creases these just a little bit. And then maybe move this down. Move this down just a little bit. Maybe we can crease this just a little bit more. All right, that looks pretty good. That looks pretty good. I'm gonna go ahead and be satisfied with that. Let's just hit Shift-Z again to see what that looks like as a transparent bottle. And that looks pretty good. And so that is pretty much it. That is this bottle modeled. Now, one thing I want to do is I want to take the original shot of our bottle that we used for reference, and then I want to put a rendering of our new bottle right next to it. Now, so you can kind of see the comparison and see how similar they look. They don't look exactly the same. The lighting's not all perfect, but they look about the same shape, and that's a good thing. Now, I'm only going to go over briefly how I set up that render. Basically, it came down to taking the background image, which was the original image I had taken for reference. I extended the background, you know, and put that in there. And I put that as a background image on the camera. And then I created the lighting. I created an environment map using my favorite Mockup 3D environment map. And then just a few lights. I put one in the back to kind of backlight it like the white cyc did. And then one kind of on the side because I had it lit by window light. And I was sort of simulating that. It doesn't work entirely the same, but, you know, I just kind of wanted to get a good idea. And then I bought it into Photoshop and did a little bit of post-production stuff, mostly just kind of tweaking the color a bit. So that's just an idea of how I got my first, just kind of a test render, really. And that is part 1 of modeling the soda bottle. Then part 2, I will go over UV unwrapping it so we can get an actual label around there and some actual text and everything, and then kind of a little bit more detail of the render. But I want to just get all the little details of how I modeled it out there first. All right, well, thank you guys. Have a good one. And if you haven't already, check out my product that I'm building, Mockup 3D. This bottle will be on Mockup 3D. This is part of what I'm doing to build it, but I was kind of making a tutorial as well to help you guys out. And hopefully I'm being pretty clear. Ask me any questions in comments. I'm happy to respond. You know, I don't make a lot of these tutorials because they are very time consuming, but, you know, do want to help people out wherever I can. So talk to you later. Have a good one. Bye-bye.